The train roared into the dusty station of Dry Creek, belching steam and smoke like a beast from hell. Every man on the platform turned their eyes toward it, squinting through the shimmering heat. The year was 1889, and out here in the lonely stretches of Arizona Territory, trains didn't come often, and when they did, they always carried some kind of trouble. Elias Boone stood alone at the edge of the platform, hat low, boots caked in dust, and heart pounding harder than a jackrabbit under a hawk's shadow. He'd been waiting 3 long months for this day. 3 months since he'd sent his last letter and the final payment. 3 months since he'd decided he could no longer live alone on that endless, whispering stretch of land. He'd ordered himself a bride. A mail-order bride. Her name was supposed to be Clara Finch, from somewhere up north, maybe Wisconsin, maybe Illinois, he couldn't recall for sure. He'd expected a small woman. Maybe shy. Maybe quiet. Maybe someone as fragile as the pressed flower she'd sent in her first letter, tiny, pale, and sweet-smelling. But when the train screeched to a stop, and the doors swung open with a metallic groan, what stepped out nearly made Elias forget how to breathe. She was huge. Not fat, no, tall. Broad-shouldered. Her head nearly cleared the doorframe as she ducked out with a heavy-looking trunk slung across one arm like it weighed nothing. The wood creaked under her boots as she stepped down, the whole platform seeming to tilt toward her. The station fell silent. Even the telegraph operator stopped mid-tap. Elias blinked. Surely this was a mistake. This couldn't be his Clara. But then she turned those blue eyes toward him, sharp, clear, and oddly soft at the same time, and gave a small smile that made the air in his chest catch. "Mr. Boone?" she asked, voice deep and steady. "Elias Boone." He tipped his hat slowly. "Ma'am, that'd be me." Her smile widened, and for a moment, Elias thought he saw something flicker in her gaze, something amused, maybe even knowing. "I reckon I'm Clara Finch," she said, setting her trunk down like it was filled with feathers. "Your bride." The words hit him harder than a stray bullet. The men at the station began whispering, a few chuckles rising like the start of a storm. Elias shot them a look sharp enough to silence most of them, but not all. The sound of laughter lingered like gun smoke. He swallowed, tipped his hat again, and forced a polite drawl. "Well, ma'am, welcome to Dry Creek. I didn't figure you'd be so tall," she said, one eyebrow rising. He flushed. "I was gonna say, strong looking." She laughed then, a rich sound that rolled through the dusty air like thunder. That night, Elias drove the wagon home through the dry plains, his new bride sitting beside him in silence. The moon hung low and red, dust swirling in ghostly ribbons behind the wheels. He could feel her watching him every now and then, calm, unbothered, while he fumbled for words that wouldn't come. When they reached his cabin, she climbed down before he could offer a hand. She hoisted her trunk again and walked straight to the door. "You got a good patch of land here," she said, looking out at the silent hills. "Hard ground, but good bones." Elias blinked. "You know about land. My pa was a farmer," she said simply. "And my ma, well, she wasn't much smaller than me." That night, Elias couldn't sleep. He sat up listening to the sounds of her moving about quietly in the other room. The floorboards groaned under her weight. Every so often, she hummed, a low tune that reminded him of a church hymn buried under prairie wind. The next morning, when he stepped outside, he froze. She was already awake, already working. The sun had barely crawled above the horizon, but Clara was out there, splitting logs with a rhythm and strength that would shame any man in town. Each swing of her axe was clean, precise. She moved like someone who'd spent her life fighting the world and had learned to win. Elias just stood there, staring, until she noticed him. "Morning," she said, not even winded. He cleared his throat. "You didn't have to start so early." "Didn't sleep much," she said with a shrug. "Thought I'd get to know your woodpile." His lips twitched. "Well, seems it got to know you first." That was the first time she smiled at him, really smiled. And for the first time, Elias felt something shift deep inside. Something dangerous. Days passed. She worked harder than any ranch hand he'd ever hired, never complained, never asked for help. She fixed fences, broke horses, even stared down a rattler once and killed it with a shovel before he could reach his gun. But for all her strength, there were moments, small, fragile ones, that caught him off guard. Like how she'd pause at sunset, wiping her brow, and whisper something he couldn't hear. Or how she'd braid her hair tight each morning but let it loose at night, when she thought he wasn't looking. One evening, a storm rolled over the plains, black, heavy, growling. Elias went to pull the horses into the barn, but lightning struck nearby, sending one wild with terror. The beast reared, nearly trampling him. Before he could move, Clara was there, grabbing the reins, twisting them around her arms, and forcing the horse still. Her voice cut through the thunder like steel. "Easy, boy, easy." The horse settled, trembling. Elias stared at her, soaked and breathless. She looked like something carved from the storm itself. "You could have been killed," he said. "So could you," she replied. They stood there, rain pounding around them, neither speaking for a long moment. Then, quietly, she added, "Maybe we both needed savin'." He didn't touch her, not yet, but his heart did something wild in his chest. Weeks turned to months. The gossip in town died down. People stopped calling her, the giant woman, and started calling her, Boone's Clara. She never said much about her past, but sometimes, in the glow of the fire, she'd trace a scar on her forearm and go silent for hours. Elias didn't ask. He didn't need to. He knew the look of someone who'd run from something. One night, as coyotes cried in the distance, she spoke softly. "Back home, they said no man would ever want me. Said I scared them off. Too big, too loud, too much." Elias looked at her across the flickering firelight. Maybe they just weren't man enough. She met his gaze, and for the first time, her eyes shone with something like tears. When he reached across the table, she didn't pull away. By the time spring came, the ranch had changed, and so had he. He laughed more. The silence didn't ache anymore. He even built her a rocking chair, oversized and solid, just so she'd have something that fit her frame. Then one afternoon, as they rode out to mend the north fence, two riders came over the hill, rough men with guns at their hips and faces like dried leather. One of them called out her name. Clara Finch. Or should I say Clara Doyle? Elias felt his gut twist. Clara's face went pale. "You don't need to be here," she said flatly. The man sneered. "You ran from your husband, Clara. He ain't too happy about that." Before Elias could reach for his gun, she stepped forward. "That man tried to break me. I left before he could finish." The man laughed. "Well, he paid good money for you. Guess he'll settle for talkin' you back dead." The next few seconds blurred into chaos, gunfire, shouting, the smell of dust and blood. Elias fired once, hitting one of them in the shoulder. The other aimed at Clara, only to have her charge him, faster than any woman had a right to move. When it was over, the two men lay broken in the dirt. Clara's hands were trembling. Elias went to her slowly. "You all right?" She nodded, eyes glistening. "I told you I wasn't a small woman, Elias. But I never told you how much it cost me to be big." He took her hands in his. "You don't owe me explanations, Clara. You're mine now, and I reckon I'm yours." The wind blew over the plains, carrying the scent of rain and iron. She leaned against him then, resting her head on his shoulder, and for the first time, the land felt alive again. Elias Boone had ordered himself a bride. But what he got, was a storm that saved him.